Hello students and welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Shefali Nagpal, Associate Professor at Human Resource Development Center, Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya, Sonipat. We are studying the paper Development of the Management Thoughts, Principles and Types under the title Human Resource Management. Let us start today with Henry Mintzberg functions. On the completion of this module, you will be able to understand the theory given by the Dr. Henry Mintzberg, to study the role of the manager at the different level of the management, and thirdly, to know the types of the management and its role in the organization. Let us begin with the introduction to the concept. Dr. Henry Mintzberg was a prominent management researcher, conducted a research to find out what areas manager duties and responsibilities are. In 1916, Henry Fayol was the first to define the manager. The Dr. Mintzberg wanted to find out that if Henry Fayol's 50-year-old definition of manager and management definition still stood in 60s and 70s. So he conducted a research based on the structured observation method. For this, Mintzberg observed the daily activities of the 5 executives on a week period. They all were from the 5 different type of organization. One was a consulting firm, another was a school, a technology firm, the fourth was a consumer goods manufacturer, and another was from the hospital. He kept track of all the activities and analyzed it. His research report titled Managerial Work Analysis from Observation was his doctoral dissertation at the Sloan School of Management, MIT. At January 1971, he submitted the report and it was accepted and published in October 1971. In this research, he said that what managers do can best be described by looking at the roles they play at work. The term management roles refers to the specific categories of managerial behavior. He defined 10 identified roles of the manager played in an organization which fall into 3 basic categories. 1. Interpersonal role, 2. Informational role, 3. Decisional role. Let us now understand the concept which has been given by the Mintzberg. According to the Mintzberg, the work carried out by the managers takes place on 3 levels, ranging from the conceptual to practical, working with information, working with and through people, and taking action. In the middle of the model are the managers who shape their work by developing specific strategies and taking specific decisions. He examines the external context in the country, culture, sector and industry, organizational context, which include type, size and life cycle of an organization, position context, level and types, situational context, which include temporary conditions and management trends, and personal context, which include background, years of employment and management style. It turns out that except management trends, all factors influence the work of managers, the most important of which is organizational type, since the nature of the organization determines many of the activities a manager must carry out. Mintzberg also claims that the work done by the managers in different countries is similar, since the country culture is far less important than expected. Mintzberg lay a good dose of realism on the table. There is no recipe for success that applies to all managers under all conditions. But to help managers on their way to becoming more successful, he provides a management effectiveness model that is derived from the literature on the functional and happy families. Unfortunately, he does not clarify why this model in particular is useful for developing effective managers. He does not go beyond saying that this model appealed to him considerably. What the model boils down to is that managers must first put in great deal of energy to be able to do their hectic work. But amidst all the chaos, they often need to find moment of reflection, time to think about their organization. They also need to have good analytical skills, since trusting intuition alone is no longer an option in today's world. The worldly perspective defined by the Mintzberg is multiculturalism, sensitivity, a good sense of teamwork and proactive attitude also help considerably. We can see that the manager job, which is divided into the three parts in this picture: interpersonal roles, informational roles and decisional roles. In the interpersonal roles, the manager acts as a figurehead, leader and a listener. In informational roles, he acts as monitor, disseminators and spokesperson. In decisional roles, he performed the roles as an entrepreneur, disturbance handler and resource allocator, negotiator. The role of the manager sounds simple enough, but anyone who has ever served as a manager knows that it is far more complex than it might sound at first. Being a leader in any organization is a complicated and challenging task that can take a variety of forms depending on the need of the organization and the people that are being led. Any given manager may be asked to complete a variety of tasks during a given day depending on what comes up and what problems need to be solved. Management experts Professor Henry Mintzberg has argued that managers' work can be boiled down to 10 common roles. According to him, these roles or expectations from the manager's behavior fall into the three categories. One is informational, that is managing by information; interpersonal, that is managing through people; and decisional, that is managing through action. These roles require developing peer relationship, carrying out negotiation, motivating subordinate, resolving conflicts, establishing informational network, making decisions with a little or ambiguous information, and allocating resources. In this process, at different times, manager wear 10 hats divided into the three categories. The roles which are defined by him were published in 10 management roles in his book Mintzberg on Management Inside Our Strange World of Organization in the year 1990. The 10 roles are figurehead, leader, listener, monitor, disseminator, spokesperson, entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator and negotiator, which we have already seen in the figure. All the three roles are overlapping, as you can see in the next diagram. Interpersonal category. The managerial role in this category involve providing information and ideas. First is figurehead. One of the important roles of the leader is simply to be a figurehead for the rest of the group. This is one of the interpersonal roles because so much of it is about being someone that people can turn to when they need help, support, etc. A good leader will project confidence so that everyone involved feels a sense of security and reassurance that the job will be done right. As a manager, one has social, ceremonial and legal responsibilities. You are expected to be the source of inspiration. People look upon to you as a person with authority and as a figurehead. Another is leader. Another interpersonal role. This one should be obvious. A manager needs to lead the people that he or she is in charge of guiding towards a specific goal. This can include telling them what to do and when to do it, organizing the structure of the team members to highlight specific skills that each possesses and even offering rewards for the job well done. This is where you provide leadership for your team, your department or perhaps your entire organization, and it is where you manage the performance and responsibility of everyone in the group. Third, liaison. The final role within the interpersonal category, acting as a liaison, means that the manager must successfully interface with a variety of people, both within the organization and outside the organization, to keep the things running smoothly. This point is all about communication, and it is one of the main things that determine the ultimate success or failure of a manager. Being able to properly communicate with the range of people in such a way that the project remains on track is a crucial skill to develop. Managers must communicate with the internal and external contacts. you need to be able to network efficiently, effectively on the behalf of your organization. Now let us move to the informational category. The managerial roles in this category involve processing information. His role as a monitor, he says that you regularly seek out information related to your organization and industry, looking for relevant changes in the environment, and you also need to monitor your team regarding both their productivity and their well-being. As a disseminator, he says that this is where you communicate potentially useful information to your colleagues and your team. As a spokesperson, as the head of the team of any size or role within an organization, you will be the representative of that team when it comes to meeting, announcements, and etc. Being a spokesperson is the final informational role on the list, and it is an important one because perception is often a big part of reality. Even if your team is doing great work, it might not be reflected as such to the other decision makers in the organization if you are not a good spokesperson. Managers represent and speak of their organization. In this role, you are responsible for transmitting information about your organization and its goal to the people outside it. In the decisional category, the manager's role is entrepreneur. In some ways, being a manager within the large organization is like running your own small business. While you will have managers above you to answer, you still need to think little on entrepreneur regarding quickly solving problems, thinking of the new ideas that could move your team forward and more. This is the first role within the decisional category on the list. As a manager, you create and control change within the organization. This means solving problems, generating new ideas, and implementing them. As a manager, one has to be a disturbance handler when an organization or a team hits an unexpected roadblocks. It is the manager who must take charge. You also need to help mediate dispute within them. As a resource allocator, every project is tackled using the resources that are limited in some way or other. As a resource allocator, it is your job to best use what you have available to get the job done and to meet your defined goals and objectives. Resources can include a budget that has been made available for the project, raw material, employees, and more. This is the third item within the decisional category, yet it is one of the most important things a manager must do. You will also need to determine where organizational resources are best applied. This involves allocating funding as well as assigning staff and other organizational resources. In the role of the negotiator, business is all about negotiation, and that is especially true for managers. The final role on the list, being a negotiator, does not mean going out of the organization to negotiate the terms of the new deal. In fact, most of the necessary negotiation will take place right within your team itself. Getting everyone to get into the overall goal and vision for a project likely will mean negotiating with individual team members to get them to adapt a role that suits their skills and personal development goals. A good manager will be able to negotiate their way through these challenges and keep the project on track for success. You may be needed to take part in it and direct an important negotiations within your team, department, and organization. You can see the decisional roles reflected in this model. Now, how we can apply the model? You can use Mintzberg 10 management roles model as a frame of reference when you are thinking about developing your skills and knowledge. This includes developing you in the areas that you consciously or unconsciously shy away from. First, examine how much time you currently spend on each managerial role. Do you spend most of your day leading, managing conflict, disseminating information? This will help you to decide which areas to work on first. Mintzberg 5 P's for strategy. The word strategy has been used implicitly in different ways, even it has traditionally been defined in only one way. Explicit recognition of multiple definitions can help people to maneuver through these difficult fields. Mintzberg provides 5 definitions of strategy. First, plan, ploy, pattern, position, perspective. Let us define each of them. Plan. The strategy is a plan, some consciously intended course of action, a guideline to deal with the situation. By this definition, strategies have two essential characteristics. They are made in advance of the actions to which they apply, and they are developed consciously and purposefully. Ploy. As a plan, strategy can be a ploy too, just a particular maneuver intended to outwit an opponent or competitor. Pattern. If strategies can be intended, they can also be realized. In other words, defining strategy as a plan is not sufficient. We also need a definition that encompasses the resulting behavior. Strategy is a pattern, specifically a pattern in a stream of action. The strategy is consistency in behavior, whether or not intended. The definition of the strategy as a plan and design can be quite independent of another. Plans may go unrealized, while patterns may appear without preconception. Plans are intended strategies, whereas patterns are realized strategies. From this, we can distinguish deliberate policies where intentions that existed previously were achieved, and the new strategies where patterns developed in the absence of intentions or despite them. Position. The strategy is a position, specifically a means of locating an organization in an environment. By this definition, strategy becomes the mediating force or match between organization and environment, that is, between the internal and external context. Perspective. The strategy is perspective. Its content consisting not just of a chosen position, but of an ingrained way of perceiving the world. The strategy is the respect is to the organization what the personality is to individual. What is of the key importance is that strategy is perspective shared by the members of an organization through their intentions and by their actions. In effect, when we talk about strategy in this context, we are entering the realm of the collective minds, individual united by the common thinking and behavior. In the strategy, plan, ploy, pattern, position and perspective can be seen in this diagram. Generalist and specialist management. The core of the Mintzberg 10 managerial role is that manager need to be both organizational, generalist and specialist. This is due to the three reasons. 1. External frustration including the operational imperfections and environmental pressures. 2. Authority disputes which upset even basic routines. 3. Expected fallibility of the individual and human manager. Mintzberg's summary statement may be that the role of the manager is quite varied and contradictory in its demand, and that is therefore not always the lack of the managerial powers, but the complexity of the individual situations demanding the variety of roles which trouble today's manager. Mintzberg writes, what is the relationship between planning and strategy? Is strategy making simply a process of planning? As the proponents of planning have so vigorously insisted, or at the other extreme, a strategic planning simply another oxymoron like progressive conservative or jumbo shrimp. In other words, should strategy always be planned, never be planned, or sometime be expected? Or should it relate to planning in some other way? After criticizing other definition of planning, Mintzberg in 1993 concluded, planning is a formalized procedure to produce an articulated results in the form of the integrated system of decisions. What to us captures the notion of the planning above all, most clearly distinguishes its literature and differentiate its practices from other processes, is its emphasis on the formalization, systematization of the phenomena which planning is meant to apply. This narrow definition is set up as the target for additional criticism of the entire idea of planning. Mintzberg argues an emphasis on the formal rationality permeates the literature of planning. Along with the rationality and decomposition, articulation is the third key component of formalization. The product of planning, the plan themselves, are being carefully decomposed into the strategies, sub-strategies, programs, budgets, objectives, and must be clearly and explicitly labeled by words and preferably numbers on the sheet of paper. An organization can plan without engaging in planning. Even it produces plan. Alternatively, an organization can engage in planning, yet not plan, and planners may do all or some of these things, sometimes none of them, yet as one we shall see in the conclusion, still serve the organization. According to him, for example, managers are not reflective or systematic planners, but work with feverish energy on all kind of belief and fragmented matters that primarily require immediate resolution. Managing is not just about the hierarchical relationship between the superiors and the subordinates, but also about the lateral relationship between the co-workers. Managers appear to have anything but complete control of their agenda and activities. Rather, they determine which obligations they must meet based on their position and which obligation they want to meet because it would benefit them. Managers continue to have little faith in official information from the formal information system. Instead, they prefer getting their information from informal contacts, chiefly by email, phone, or meetings. They are also becoming increasingly more dependent on email. About the latter, Mintzberg claimed that the internet is not necessarily something new for managers, but something that makes it easier for them to get into and stay in contact with people. Now let us summarize. Mintzberg says that work is carried out by the managers, takes place at the three levels, ranging from the conceptual to practical, working with information, working with and through people, and taking actions. It states that there is no recipe for the success that applies to all the managers under all conditions. But to help managers on their way to becoming more successful, he provides a management effective model that is derived from the literature on the functional and happy families. Unfortunately, Mintzberg does not clarify why this model in particular is useful for developing effective managers. That is all. Thank you.